What's up, guys? Lucas here, and today I'm going to be talking about the Denver Nuggets 2020-2021 NBA offseason. So looking at their 2019-20 season, they had the best year they've had as the core with Jokic, Murray. They made it to the Western Conference Finals, beating the Los Angeles Clippers after being down 3-1 in the second round, and beating the Utah Jazz after being down 3-1 in the first round. And then they fell to the Lakers in 5 games. But it was very a surprising postseason, to say the least. Maybe not the Utah series. Definitely was surprising when they came back 3-1. But the Lakers, no one expected them to win. And after being down 3-1, I would have bet all the money in the world that the Clippers were going to win that series, and they ended up losing. So hats off to them. Jamal Murray played really well in the playoffs. And they did this all without Will Barton, which was their best wing defender and just another ball handler and scorer on this team. So it was a really impressive run for them. So looking at the players they lost this season, they lost Mason Plumlee and Jeremiah Grant, both to the Detroit Pistons. Mason Plumlee is not a huge deal. He was just kind of a backup big. He was good because he actually could pass. Like, he's a good passer for a big, so he could actually semi replace what Jokic does when he's not on the floor. But this is just a thing I noticed a lot of the time. He would get way too aggressive with his passes, and I think I would like to go back and look how many turnovers he averaged, because I feel like at least once a game he made a pass that was picked off just because he was trying to weave it in between a few defenders. And then Jeremiah Grant, which is a bigger deal, obviously. Jeremiah Grant had a really big playoffs for them. He was a huge part of their run. He kind of replaced what Will Barton did for them. He had a 26-point game against the Clippers, I believe. Just had a great playoffs, played good defense, scored the ball well off Jamal and Jokic. So that was a tough loss, but for what he was asking for, $70 million, I think it's honestly a good thing that Detroit was the one who ended up paying him that money instead of the Nuggets, because supposedly they both offered the same contract, but he wanted to get a bigger role in Detroit. So I think that's kind of a blessing in disguise, because he's a good player, but once you have to pay him that much money, he kind of loses his value to me. So they acquired no players by trade. They drafted RJ Hampton, or I believe they traded for him after he was drafted. I'm not sure by who, but RJ Hampton, pretty interesting prospect. He was the number 1 prospect in high school coming out, or number 2, went to Australia, and his stock dropped because he was a role player there. But I've heard some good things. I heard he matured a lot there, and he's not going to have that rookie. Rookies have trouble their first year sometimes because they have to get used to the size and speed of pros, playing against grown men. But he did that already, so he might be more well adjusted than most 19-year-olds coming into the league. And it also continues their GM's tradition of drafting high upside guys very low in the lottery or draft in general. This is Michael Porter Jr., Bol, and now RJ Hampton joins the group. 3 guys who were supposed to go a lot higher, ended up dropping for some reason, injury, off the court issues, just not playing well, and he's just taking a swing on these guys, and I think it's a good idea. Free agents signed. They signed JaMychal Green from the Los Angeles Clippers. I thought that was an interesting signing, because if you listen to JaMychal Green, he has this really funny quote where basically it's talking about the Clippers' terrible chemistry, and he basically says, once the Nuggets came back 3-1 against us, I knew I wanted to play for that team. Basically saying it's funny because it's the same thing KD did with the Warriors when they came back 3-1 against his Thunder team the year before, then went to them. But it's JaMychal Green, and he was watching them damn, that's a good team. I don't want to be on this shit team anymore. Let's go over there. But it's he's a role player. I just thought it was kind of funny that a role player actually would say that, throw that much shade at the Clippers. So other players returning on the roster, you got Bol, who played really well during the scrimmage games. That's why the clip is kind of weird. It has a border. During the scrimmage games, they only did that kind of video. But he was really good in those games. He has all his physical tools are undeniable. He's 7'3", I believe. Can shoot the ball. Kind of plays like a small forward. Like, he's not a traditional big at all. He's perimeter oriented, but he's 7'3". Like, he's very comfortable shooting the ball, handling the ball. Good shot blocker. I think he could be a weird fit next to Jokic, but really good one. Like, if Jokic is going to be the big guy, he could, like, make up for his lack of athleticism and do the things like an athletic big would do, like shot blocking, just like protecting the rim, rebounding, like help with rebounding, and then he's able to space the floor on the other end. And if he can develop his game more, I mean, he's 7'3" and he can dribble. He'll be able to, like, it's just how much he can develop, because physically he's a freak. So there's no other way to put it. Another player, Will Barton, he's coming back from injury this season. He didn't play for them at all in the bubble, and I think he missed most of this year. He's been a really good player for them. Before Jamal Murray came along last year, he was probably their second best player, and before Michael Porter came along this year, he was probably their third best player. So now he's probably their fourth guy. I think he's still really useful to them. He's a good shooter, good ball handler, good, decent defender, and he's just going to play the Jeremiah Grant minutes. There's different players. He's way more offensive focused, a little smaller, isn't as good defensively, but he's going to help them out. Like, just having more guys who can shoot around Jokic and Murray are going to be helpful, instead of, like, because last year they had Gary Harris, Torrey Craig, Paul Millsap as, like, the group around, or Michael Porter Jr. around Murray and Jokic. So having a guy like Barton who can shoot reliably and play defense reliably next to them is really helpful. Another guy, Gary Harris, he was injured, then came back from injury midway through the bubble, and he's had a rough go of it the last two seasons. He was the second, like, when he was drafted, and that team was Jokic, Gary Harris, and Jamal Murray as, like, their young core. Harris was the second best player behind Jokic. Like, he was averaging like 19 points a game. He looked like a really good young player, but then he tore his ACL, I believe, some sort of injury, and he just hasn't been able to get back to the same level or even close to that offensively. He's still a really good defensive player, and it's nice starting him next to Jamal Murray because he can take on the toughest team's guard, but I just see him limiting what they can do offensively and overall just like how they are going to do in the postseason, just because he has games where he shoots well from three, but then he's just not reliable from out there, and it's just tough because defenses will leave him open. And he had one good shooting game against the Clippers, but he had a lot of bad shooting games against the Lakers and a few against the Clippers, so he's just inconsistent, and it's tough to play him next to those two guys. But his defense is undeniable. But I could definitely see them upgrading at that position throughout the season. That's like the one position people keep saying, like, if they added a Drew Holiday there instead, or I've even heard like a JJ Redick with Jokic, that would be crazy. But yeah, just like a better shooter, like a knockdown shooter, or just at least a more reliable shooter next to Harris. But his defense is nice. Paul Millsap, I believe he's still on his like max contract. I think this is his last year. It might be less than that. I might be wrong. He is still a good player for them. He could still shoot the ball pretty league average, and he's a good defender. And I just like him because it's a weird thing, but it's like not going to show up in stats. But he's a guy who, like, if the ball is swung to him, he's able to make a decision quickly, and it's usually the correct one. So it's like when defenses are scattering around trying to guard, like when you're swinging the ball, it's like he's going to make the right decision quickly in the flow of an offense. So I think Paul Millsap is still a really good player for them, and he's probably going to be starting, or at least playing crunch time minutes. And yeah, he's a good defender. Yeah, he's just a good fit for this team, so I like Paul Millsap. Monte Morris is their backup point guard, and he actually did play a lot of crunch time for them instead of Gary Harris, because he's more reliable of a shooter, and he's a really good on-ball guard. Like, honestly, his turnover to assist percentage is one of the best in the league. Like, the last time I checked, I almost made a video on him a few years ago. He had like a 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, which is like only Chris Paul is the only person to have that high of an assist to turnover ratio. And obviously he's not doing it in the same minutes, but he's a very efficient passer, very good at running the offense, just a really good floor general when he's out there. And yeah, he's just skilled at pretty much everything. He's not very aggressive scoring the ball, but during the playoffs he actually did get fouled a good bit, and just he was aggressive. He was actually playing pretty aggressive in the bubble. So I really like Monte Morris. They re-signed him to a 3-year, $27 million contract, which I think is worth it. He's one of the best backup point guards in the league, and I think he can, like, if you want to move Jamal Murray to like a 2 kind of thing, and then have him handle the ball and have Murray like run around on shoot and on screens and stuff. I like Monte Morris a lot. Michael Porter Jr. is the other like young player on this team, and he's like what people are saying is the X factor this year. I do think his play will determine not how good this team is, but how much of a threat this team actually is, because they do have a lot of talent, and if he's an all-star caliber player, this team easily could be one of the best teams in the league and compete in the West for a championship. He was really good offensively last year, just super skilled, getting to the rim. He's a great shooter, like pull up threes, just can shoot over people because of his height, very fluid, good at handling the ball. It's defensively that he was just atrocious. It was tough for Mike Millen to play him. He'd just let people run by him. It wasn't even like an effort thing. It was just he has terrible instincts, and just like he was always caught in the wrong place, always ball watching, letting people cut behind him, like just bad fundamentals on his part. So yeah, I think Michael Porter can be a really good player. It's just going to be his defense and because it's just like how long can you play him if he's going to kill you on defense. So, but offensively he's very good, and I think going to be a good player for them. Jamal Murray, the star on this team, he broke out during the playoffs. He had like a couple 50-point games. Just was a flamethrower this playoffs. Just couldn't miss. Like he just became a consistent, at least like 25-point scorer during the playoffs, and it was really good to see for him. I really like Jamal Murray. He's one of the most entertaining players to watch. This team in general, super entertaining to watch, and Jamal Murray's part of that. I hope he can keep it up, become like a 23 to 25 point per game scorer. I could see him leading this team in scoring, being like the offensive engine on this team, where like Jokic kind of is like controlling everything. He's the one actually putting the ball in the basket a lot of the time. So yeah, I really like Jamal Murray, and yeah, I think he can make an all-star team this year. I think the sky's the limit for him. And then the star in this team, Nikola Jokic, he played great this playoffs. He's never really had a bad playoff series. Like, he's a weird player where he's just, his play style is so unique. I feel like he's so confident at a young age already. Like, he just plays so slow, looks for the open guy, like, plays at his own pace. He'll throw up these weird herky-jerky, like, jump shots and, like, one-legged, like, it's just runners. Like, it's the weirdest thing. He plays so, like, looking at him, you don't think he's going to be one of the best players in the NBA, and he just is. And, yeah, he just, he's going to be the best player on this team. He could be an MVP caliber player. Last season, he got off to a slow start. That's the only problem with him. He doesn't really keep his body in great shape. He usually plays himself into shape. So, like, at the beginning of last year, he, like, struggled out of the gate. And I think it might happen again, especially because they're having such a quick turnaround from last season to this season. But I think as long as he is averaging, like, 18 to 20 points and his normal, like, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, this team is going to be a top 3 seed in the West. And that's where I'm going next. I do think this team is going to be really good. I think they're a top 3 seed in the West. I think this team could be the second best team in the West if Michael Porter Jr.'s defense improves and they're able to play him like 30-plus minutes a game. But, yeah, even if he isn't, this team has a lot of talent, and Jokic and Murray alone would get you in the playoffs, and then having Millsap, Barton, and Harris, and then even more guys, Jermichael Green, and if Bol could even play some games for them. So yeah, they just got a lot of talent. It's a deep team, and I'm Monte Morris as well. Yeah, I could see his team easily being a 2 seed in the West this year. So yeah, that's where I fall on them. I still would pick the Lakers to make it to the finals, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had like a big year and ended up being the best team in the West. So yeah, that's how I feel about the Nuggets. Let me know how y'all feel. Catch you guys next time. Bye.